Want to know the mistake that kills 90% of startups? They're drowning in busy work instead of focusing on what actually matters. I almost lost my company to this exact problem until I discovered the concept that high growth companies like Google and Intel used to successfully scale. Hey, this is Arjun Mahadevan. I'm the CEO and founder of Doola.com, a fintech business in a box based here in New York City that's raised over $13 million. Today, I'm going to share the concept that took us from chaos to clarity, and it actually saved the company. This is a concept called ROCs, also known as objectives and key results. And I learned this concept after reading this incredible book called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. I'm going to share the ROCs framework. This is a 3-step process to actually implement ROCs into your business. Now, you might be like me. You might have heard the term objectives and key results and thought, what's the point of going through this exercise of a spreadsheet and writing out your objectives and your goals? Why not just work? Why not just ship things and do things? And I do believe at the end of the day, execution eats strategy for breakfast. But then I learned the hard way. Strategy is a multiplier in execution. You could be working hard, but you might be working on the wrong thing. And that is what was happening in Doola. We were working, we were busy. The hours were going up, but the revenue was staying flat. So something had to change. And ultimately, it was that problem. We were busy. We were drowning in busy work. But were we working or focusing on what matters? The harsh truth was no. So it was at this time. It was almost like this book was a gift from God. And someone recommended it at a conference I was actually at. And they said, hey, you should check out the book Measure What Matters. And I had heard of OKRs. I'll tell you the truth. We were even doing OKRs in the company. But I'll be real. I wasn't fully bought into it. And I don't think the full team was too. But when I read this book, everything changed. Now, to be real, there was one image which knocked this home for me. It was this single image which completely made me understand why ROCs, or objectives and key results, are so important. In these jars, you have rocks, you have pebbles, and you have sand. Rocks are the biggest things, pebbles are smaller, sand is dust. Now, in these two jars, you can actually see that in this first jar, the rocks overflow out the top. And the reason this happened is because if you start by putting in the sand first, then the pebbles, there's no space for the rocks. But in that same jar, which is the second jar, if you flip the order and put the rocks in first, you'll find the pebbles and sand actually filter in beautifully between the rocks. And in that same jar, all the same objects fit. That is an analogy for you, time, and the things you're working on in your company. Time and you, or I guess is that jar. That's the amount of time and the resources you have to execute on something in a given quarter. ROCs are the biggest, most meaty initiatives. That could be we need to build this new product. We need to close this new partnership. We need to make this new hire. Those are the top priorities that actually have the biggest impact on the business. Pebbles are your day-to-day obligations or responsibilities. That could be a weekly one-on-one. It could be an investor update. It could be paying invoices. Those things have to happen. They're a core part of any business, but they're not the most important thing, but they have to happen. And then sand, these are all the interruptions. The water, the sand that gets sprayed in your face when you're walking through the beach. Those things might be emails that come in, or a lawsuit that comes in, or an angry customer that comes up out of nowhere. Those also happen too, but they're unpredictable. So if you start your day or focus your days just on reacting to everything interrupting, and then after that, you're like, oh, wait a second, I have these day-to-day responsibilities. Not only will the end of the day come and you'll be mentally tired, but you'll realize there's not time left for the rocks. But instead, if you flip that on its head and you actually take the time to think about and write down and align as a company on what are the top priorities and focus on those first and hold yourself accountable and have directly responsible individuals next to each rock, you'll find that everything else just fits. The pebbles fit, all the interruptions fit, and you actually make progress towards your goals. This image is seared in my brain. I kid you not, it's so seared in my brain that every week in our company All Hands, I show this image now. When we talk about rocks, we talk about prioritization. And I've even started to hear in the company people say, these are the rocks, or yeah, that email was a pebble. I love that. That's music to my ears. Not because we're speaking the same language, although I will say, sports teams have shared languages and plays. Why shouldn't companies? So that's huge. But the bigger reason is, as a company, we now have a shared framework for identifying what the rocks are and then executing towards them. I'm going to now give you the exact framework for how you can implement ROCs in your company. This is the ROC framework. Step one is you need to actually choose your rocks. Now, when it comes to choosing rocks, you can have rocks that are 10-year rocks or 1-year rocks. 90 days is what's guided in terms of picking a correct window. Now, the reason for that is human attention naturally tends to last for about 3 months or 90 days before you need to refocus. So I think a quarter is a good planning cycle. There's 4 in a year as well. The next thing is, in 90 days, you can then choose the top rocks or priorities that you want to accomplish. So you can start at the company level. What are the top 3 things that as a company, if we accomplish them, are going to help us get to our goal? Now, part of this is you need to actually have an annual goal. If you don't have a goal, you're a ship going in circles like this. You're a shipwrightless at sea. So you need an annual goal, and then your quarterly rock should be the top things that can help you get there. The other thing too is less is more. I said that twice because less is more is so important. We say there's only 3 to 5 company rocks per quarter. This forces clarity. If you have a list of 20 things, you have a list of nothing. If your entire essay is in bold, nothing is in bold. You need to have a shortened list to have priorities. The other thing we do is we ensure each goal has to be SMART. This is a really cool acronym. S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for relevant, and T stands for time bound. Every single rock or objective has to pass this criteria. Let me give you an example. A bad rock would be work on partner stuff. What does that mean? It's not measurable, it's not time bound. There's no way an objective third party could say it was done. A good version is publish influencer playbook in Notion by end of quarter and share with the team. That's good. You know exactly what's getting shipped. It's measurable, it's time bound, it's specific. And even someone who doesn't know what an influencer playbook is can objectively say if it was done or not done. And then that takes you to the final point, which is the most important point. Once you've determined rocks, you have to work on the rocks first. You have to prioritize them. In your day or in your week or when you're planning for your department, put the rocks first. Then talk about the pebbles, then talk about the sand. Again, we're all busy, but are we working on the right things? This is what the step 1 of the rock framework helps you understand. Actually going through and identifying and aligning as a company, are these the top priorities? It's an incredible exercise for alignment. Okay, now step 2 is defining your key results. Key results are measurable outcomes that help indicate progress. So I'm going to give you an exact example here of a rock and then the specific key results that ladder up to that. The rock we had was launch the business in a box e-commerce analytics product. So again, that is specific because we're launching the product, means it has to go live. It's time bound because inherently it's capped at 90 days. So that's a goal for the quarter. And even if someone doesn't know what any of that is, they can tell if it was launched or not, if the product's live. So the key results we had are those sub indicators which allow you to make measurable progress. In this case here, it's complete the QA by a specific date. Activate 50 creators in the first cohort who are helping to promote the launch. Convert 100 customers to use the product once it goes live. And then hit 50K of MRR by quarter end. So we took a product initiative, but you can notice that there's key results that can then span across the company. This is what's really cool. Again, earlier I used to think you should just go down and work, but you have a team. And by having these clear objectives, the entire company, they can say, hey, these are ways that we can contribute across the company, cross-functionally, to achieve this goal. Remember, OKRs are not a to-do list. They're a tool for focus, performance, and accountability. And step 3, this to me is the most important part. It's the weekly accountability rhythm. You can have these goals, you can get excited, you can publish them. But if you're not systematically following up to understand, are the goals on track? Are we hitting the goals? And are we actually getting rewarded based on goals? Then what's the point? Every week, the entire company has their own rocks or key results, and they have to go through and actually mark, is it on track or off track? Every single week. Now, there are some departments who, depending on their goals, have monthly rocks, but for most people, it's every single week. Now, this might sound like a lot. Like, I get the idea of having a goal and then top objectives, and you gave me one example. So I actually want to give an example that helps bring this all together using football. You start with the general manager, and the main objective is to make money for the owners. That's the highest level goal. From there, you can see some of the key results are winning the Super Bowl and filling the stands to 88%. So if you do those two things, you're likely going to make money. They're those sub-dependencies. And then you can see, and you can imagine in a company now, you have the head coach, you have the head of PR, you have other people. The head coach's job is to win the Super Bowl. The head of PR's job is to fill the stands to 88%. And then you can see how it breaks down even more. To win the Super Bowl, we need to do 200 yards per game in passing. The third ranked defense, 25-yard punt return average. For PR, we need to hire 3 players, get 2 Monday night games, and highlight key players. And then you can see from there, each of the key results ladders down again. For the offensive team, their objective is 200 yards game passing attack. That means they need a 75% completion rate to be the third-ranked defense in the NFL. That's the defense objective. That means we need to allow less than 100 yards for passing per game. So you can see here, and I love the sports example because a lot of us have played some form of sports, a company is like a sports team. You can have your top-level objectives and key results, and everything really beautifully trickles down throughout the entire company. And that's how you go from setting this lofty goal of making money for owners or winning the Super Bowl, which is kind of like making money for your company or reaching your annual goals, all the way down to what is an individual contributor at your company doing. That is the rock framework. Now, the last thing I'll say, this is one thing which I didn't fully get about rocks. You can set rocks or KRs, which are achievable, and you can get to the end of the quarter and have green on tracks everywhere. But we at Doola, and this is actually what John Doe recommends, we would rather someone hit 70 or 80% of their rocks, but they stretch. Because tell me what's better, hitting 100% of your goal, but sandbagging the goal, or setting an ambitious goal and hitting 70%. We could say, hey, let's get $100 in revenue, and we easily do that. Or we could say, you know what, let's get 1,000 and only get 70% of the way there. In that case, you made $700, but you didn't get green on your goal. So it's very important, and what we do is we have aspirational goals and committed goals. Committed KRs or committed rocks are things that are going to get done. The aspirational goals will be stretches, and I think it's very important to have both and have a culture or company that says it's okay to stretch, and if you stretch and actually succeed, you're not going to be penalized for that. That is a wrap. This is the exact rock framework that we use at Doola, which has helped us scale from nothing to a company now valued at $100 million. And this is the exact framework we use internally to align the full team towards our annual goals, towards our quarterly planning, towards what I'm doing each week and each day. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like, subscribe. I put out content like this on the regular. And if you're just looking for more tips to level up your business, a couple things. One, if you're a founder yourself, this is why my company Doola exists, so we can handle your formation, bookkeeping, and taxes so you can focus on what you do best while Doola handles the rest. Link below, you can schedule a free demo with our team to see how we can support you. I'd love to be a small part of the journey. And last but not least, if you have any questions on rocks or any other concepts of company building, I'm more than happy to share. I'm an open book. You can comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.